Hi, I'm John Sicotte, executive editor of the Brewer magazine. Welcome to another edition of the Brewer magazine video podcast, and hope all is going well with you. Of course, make sure that you're following us on Facebook. You can see us on YouTube and Spotify, or listen on Spotify at least. Many different ways to be able to keep up, and of course, brewermag.com for all your updates. All right, well, diversity, that's kind of the word. Diversification, I guess, would be a better word for it in the craft beer industry, and sometimes that means exploiting or using a brand that you already have to be able to build upon it, or creating a whole new brand entirely. Those are some of the ways that breweries are kind of finding new avenues. And another way of trying to just break into and break through old laws. So we had a great discussion here with Scotty Hunter, one of the founders of Urban Artifact in Cincinnati. Scotty, thanks so much for joining with us.
Yeah, John, glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, a lot of exciting things going on for you guys. And we were talking before we started recording, just the amount of states that Urban Artifact is getting into, and the boost that you guys have had is basically being a sour and fruit forward brand, and kind of give the history on that for people that might not know about Urban Artifact, and then we'll kind of get into kind of the new thing that you guys are looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. So Urban Artifact has been in operation for a bit over 9 years now. We opened in April of 2015, and we always felt that a business needed to have a very clear focus in order to succeed, and in order to succeed at a broader scale. So we started off being sour and wild beers specifically. We ended up, after some market feedback, dropping anything with wild yeast and more focused on the acidity side of things, and further evolved into fruit forward, right? So we're broadly in the sour category, but we like to say we're the fruit experts, and that's where our focus is on real fruit. And that is, I think, we were talking before the podcast about where we're at in our distribution, and we're up to 20 states, which is pretty uncommon for a brewery of our size. And even when we opened up in terms of, just because there's a lot of brands and a lot of competition, and you've got to be pretty unique to stand out from that crowd.
Yeah. And the uniqueness, I think, has helped you guys, and probably been able to build in some kind of retailer or distributor's portfolio. Is that kind of like you said, you guys are in a niche, and you're able to make sure that you work your way into that. Has that been kind of your calling card when it does come to expanding in territories?
Exactly. That's 100% the strategy and goal, and it's really worked for us because, we're not competing. Every distributor has craft brands, right? In every market, everywhere. But generally speaking, we are not competing with existing brands in a distributor's portfolio. We are additive because we have such a specific focus, especially having these types of products year round, where a lot of other breweries, if they do dabble in tart, sour, fruit, they're seasonal products. And I can tell you now, people drink these types of products all year if they're available to them, because otherwise I wouldn't be in business if people didn't drink them in winter. That's we get the summer beer thing a lot. We find that distributors are excited about the brand because they see how it can be additive, something unique to the market for them. And then with that too, we do get a lot of brand loyalty, but not, I don't think, in the traditional sense. So I think of like old school breweries, brand loyalty being like, hey, Sierra Nevada, their pale ale, that's what I drink. That's my one beer I drink. Ours is more, hey, I love fruit beer. I love Urban Artifact. What fruit do I want today? Or what fruit do I want this week? So it might be berries, it might be tropical. So we see a little bit more of a stratification across like our sales in our portfolio. Like we still have a clear lead, and we still have, a kind of a hierarchy, but we don't have that one runaway SKU where it's like that's 75% of our sales, like some of the old school breweries are and have been in terms of what drove their business.
Yeah, yeah, and that kind of leads into, what I actually started as a conversation with you and I back in September of last year before you guys even came around to adding this. But Cappy Snacks was this, I guess the way you kind of put it back then was to bridge that gap for people that were maybe not huge Tart beer drinkers. And I think you used Leinenkugel's Shandy line as kind of it's almost too sweet for some people. And so Cappy Snacks became this middle ground for you guys. First, kind of when did you guys finally start releasing, this fruit punch version of it? And we'll get into, kind of what the next stages are for this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one thing that we had always struggled with our brand is kind of that entry level product, those like lower ABV, more sessionable, more like price conscious packages. And a lot of that was because, with those products, you generally can't add as much fruit, right? Because you have kind of cost restrictions that are going to hold your or tie your hands up a little bit. So you means a little bit less flavor intense because we generally ferment everything dry. With Cappy Snacks specifically, we made an investment in some equipment that allowed us to back sweeten that product line a little bit to get a little bit more intensity of flavor, but also add some additional balance to the acidity that's already present there, and kind of soften that for consumers that might be new to the category. Because I think generally speaking, it's a much better way for fruit beer to exist, because bitterness to balance oftentimes clashes with fruit flavor, in my opinion. It's not like a pleasant thing. It's very much more bitterness being much more of an acquired, not necessarily flavor, but sensation. Whereas acidity, we're used to it, but we're just not used to it necessarily in beverage or food, for Americans, unless you're talking lemonade. But everybody that eats fruit knows, okay, if I get some berries, they're going to have some acidity, right? Cherries can be, sour cherries are a common thing. So there is that association for those aspects, those fruits, and it makes an overall, in my opinion, more drinkable beverage.
And when did you guys finally get around to being able to release that? I know when we talked that it hadn't gotten to that point, but when did they debut, and how are things been going with it?
Yeah. So it debuted the beginning of this year, very end of January, last week of January, and it's been going very well. It's something that, again, it fit a hole in our portfolio, but also draft wise. So, when you look at breweries historically, as a brewery matures, you start to see more package sales versus draft sales. Well, craft pre-pandemic would be kind of opposite of that. It'd be more heavily draft, less package. But we would see more heavily package sales instead of draft, because of kind of the price point of our kegs and the reception to, our styles in general. Cappy Snacks has really helped us make up ground there, because it's a more affordable keg. It's, got a little bit more sweetness, a little bit more sessionable for the newer consumers to our product line. And that's led to growth in a lot of states. Our home state of Ohio is up 5% by volume. We have states such as Michigan, PA, Florida, they're all up 20+% year over year. And right now that's pretty unheard of in terms of craft beer.
Very nice. Well, and this is kind of what I wanted to touch on, since it is a newer product, but it's going well.
Yeah.
Line extensions are, very much a thing now in craft beer. You definitely see someone taking a brand that is successful and being able to build on it. Was that a plan at the beginning? Like, let's see where this goes so that we can continue? Or is this something that, like, we like this, we need to expand the line and find different fruit offerings outside of what you guys started with Fruit Punch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of think of Cappy Snacks as kind of its own brand family. Is how we set up to develop that. Versus what a traditional line extension would be saying, taking like Gadget, our bestseller, and doing a variation on that. So we always intended to if it had the success that we thought it could have, to add to it. And we are working on the next flavor of that. We're going to do a test batch later in August and release that. And presuming that goes well, which we expect, it'll become a year-round offering next year and be part of our core portfolio.
When it comes to, finding, because you guys work with so many different fruits, are there things that you feel work better in the line, or do you always want to try to find every fruit possible, use every type of combination, find what works best? How do you guys approach the using fruit in any beer line?
Yeah, there's some fruits that don't taste good fermented, period. Like watermelon, I've never had a natural watermelon beer that tasted good. In my opinion, it's usually some flavoring if you're going to get that flavor. So, we've done a lot of trial and error over the last 9+ years to find out what works well. And then not just what works well in liquid, but also what customers respond to, right? Like, for example, stone fruits, right? Peach markets well, sells well. Apricots, I think tastes way better. Do not market well, does not sell well. Nectarines, same thing. It's another stone fruit that's great flavor, aroma, things of that nature, but it's for the American consumer, it's a very tough sell. So, we look at ways that we can kind of meet people where they're at with some of those fruits that maybe might have great flavor but aren't as well known. So I expect we'll do some of that with some of our seasonal lines next year in terms of those fruits, because it's a shame to really narrow down to just like berries and peaches, and there's still some great tropicals. There's still some great stuff there, but there's also a lot of stuff that I think we can expose people to in a way that gets them to take that step.
Sure. Well, that was one part of the business aspect that you guys are doing, but you guys are continually looking to find new avenues and finding new ways to find new market share. And one of them is right here. Wait, I got to go this way. Costallo, which is something new for you guys as well. And I'm gonna kind of have a good afternoon beverage here with me, and you can kind of tell me a little bit about it. And just, I want to go old school. Can you read that? My Hamm's glass. That's where nice. I drink that in a Hamm's glass. But yeah, tell me a little bit about Costallo, what it is. It's an NA beverage, but it's still got a kick.
It does. Yeah. So very excited about this. I've spent a lot of time this year on getting this brand out there more. And what it is it's a hemp-derived beverage. And so we position it as a THC soda. And what that means is basically there is Delta-9 THC in this beverage. The initial product lines all have 5 milligrams per 12-ounce can. And we consider it a low-dose beverage in terms of THC. And we've always kind of looked for like, okay, we have this expertise in fruit. How can we bring it to another product category, right? And we've looked over the years like, hey, a few years ago, we considered RTDs. Didn't think we could make it work in the way that we were going to be happy with. Late fall last year, as we were working on some other, kind of investigations and adding to the business, we came across the hemp beverage category, which in Ohio is still very, very new. Other states are a lot farther along than Ohio is, but there's not a lot of entrants locally. I think we are the only and current Ohio-based brand in terms of having manufacturing here, and we were very excited because we saw a lot of products that were pretty simple, like very much in the seltzer realm. Like if you were to have a LaCroix or a Polar with some hemp emulsion mixed in, that's what a lot of the products were. So we consider our beverage more in the full flavor realm, and that's where you tend to see success in this beverage category over a long period of or longer period of time once competition ramps up. So anyway, point being is hemp-derived beverage that we're bringing our real fruit expertise to and crafting under a brand new product line, because while it has some key tenets that are synonymous with Urban Artifact, it's not meant to be tart sour. It has its own brand that it needs to live under and grow under.
Yeah. And how was, what was your the reasoning to doing this? Do you feel like you had an expertise in it that you wanted to be able to exploit? I mean, how was it something that you had to bring in people to help run this part of the business? Is it how did you come to the realization that you wanted to create a company like this to be able to see if you can thrive in this market?
Yeah, I mean, really, we already had the expertise in terms of flavor development in-house. We've used, we probably 300, 400, 500 different products over the years that we've released. So we kind of know how flavors work, and we think we have a really good group of people there that can develop that. So it was more learning about the industry and then, learning the back end legal side of things. So we did retain, a hemp specific lawyer to make sure that we were doing things, as by the book as we could, because that's always been our position, is make sure that we're following the rule of the law so that we don't get in trouble. Even if you could push things one way or another, that's usually not something that we try to do. So it was that, having that flavored expertise there, having a product category that needed some more innovation and attention to it, right? Like there's still some great brands out there that will be in it for the long haul, but I think there was a lot of brands that got in just as like, hey, we're going to make a quick buck, and maybe folks didn't have any sort of like prior consumer packaged goods or beverage experience, and they're lacking in a lot of things that I think we can excel at. So when I mention innovation, it might be packaging innovation, it might be product line innovation. We're already, it's good. It'll be a couple weeks, and we can spoil it a little bit here, but we're going to do a seasonal line for these THC sodas, and the very first release is going to be a pumpkin spice. And as far as I know, we will be the very first pumpkin spice THC beverage on the market. So I think that'll get us a lot of attention. People will be excited. We're sending it to a liquor chain up in Minnesota that is, very much at the forefront of this category. And the fact that we were able to get kind of an ear with them on this beverage kind of tells me that we're heading in the right direction with that seasonal line to add and further grow the category that is still burgeoning.
Sure, absolutely. And, where are you getting your cues from? Who are you been talking to that's in this THC industry to be able to learn from? I know there's other states that have been a little bit ahead of this. And like you said, you're in Ohio. It's just a brand new thing as of this year for them. What are you learning from either, positives or negatives that you've seen that have happened already that are helping you guys build yourself forward with that?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So we're part of a group called the Hemp Beverage Alliance, and it's a beverage specific group of folks in the hemp space, and that's been super helpful. Met a lot of people there, asked a lot of questions, try to lend my my little expertise that I've acquired so far to folks too when it comes up. But also, Serene Distributing is our wholesaler for a number of states, for Costello, for Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky. But we've also worked with them for years with our beer brands in PA, New York, New Jersey. And, they've been selling these beverages in states for a long period of time. So we definitely leaned on them and their expertise and what they, know about the market, what they're seeing, to learn quite a bit. And then, finally, our emulsion supplier that we get the hemp emulsion from, they've been a great resource in terms of things to know when you're manufacturing and mixing and making sure that we're having consistency. And that's something that we already know you want to have with beer from a flavor standpoint, mash temperatures and alcohol. And while in some ways hemp beverages are a little more straightforward because there's not as intense of a process in terms of mashing, there's still technical aspects to keep in mind so that you're having consistent dosage per can so that when the consumer buys something, they get exactly what they expect.
Yeah. Well, and the flavor, you guys have come out with, I think 3 so far. Is that right? Cherry cola, red cream soda, and grape soda. And I've tried all 3. This is actually my first cherry cola to try. And like you said, with the knowledge of having fruit, and knowing how that you want to use it, to be able to use it in these 3, they've all been delicious, that first and foremost. And I've given them to people that were skeptical about things like this. And the number one thing was, wow, that tastes really good. And I think that's what you brought that up is some people were maybe of just getting it in to be like, hey, I'm going to sell you this really quick. How much of the background was it be like, we have to make sure this tastes good first and foremost?
We weren't going to do it if it didn't taste good, right? That's kind of one of the key tenets of us producing liquid in any category. And I was one of those people a year ago, right? If you asked me a year ago, I had tried a couple things that were on the market and I didn't think they were any good. And I guess I didn't really ask why, which is, a miss on me because we could have been a little bit further ahead than we are right now in this space. But, I was very skeptical. I had to do a lot of research to kind of learn about it and feel comfortable with it. But then we also had to make sure that, we had a great tasting product that we could stand behind, that, if we're going to ask distributors to carry this, that they're excited about it. Because we have partnered with existing distributors in our network for this. And then we've also partnered with some new distributors outside of our existing network for this beverage category. Because it is, it is new, and not everybody is gung-ho to jump in. But I think there's quite a bit of runway, and the folks that are getting in now and establishing themselves as experts will really reap the rewards in the future.
Sure. Well, how about just in the whole scheme of like, this is a completely different category for you guys, but I think it's an important one to be able to address because, I think I just read a chart it was a crazy chart. And I think it was on Craft Beer Professionals that, like the bottom 30% of adults don't drink at all. And then like the top 10% drink, 90% of the products and stuff like that. So you're looking at a wide demographic. And I think we talked about this before we started recording, is just that there is that market of people that just don't drink or are just doing, hemp derived things. So being able to open that up, it's a business opportunity.
Yeah, it 100% is a business opportunity there. Because like you said, there's people that don't drink. And, we're seeing changing demographics and things ebb and flow. And I don't think beer is long-term, going to continue to track down. I think it's still the beverage of choice for this country, and will make a comeback in some point in time, but it might be a decade, right? It might be 15 years before that's the case. And as a business, we can't sit around and wait for that. So it's definitely a big business opportunity to be able to diversify ourselves and, make sure that we're staying ahead of things and doing the right things for, our employees and our fans that, love Urban Artifact and want to continue to see it prosper.
Yeah. Well, and finally, before I let you go, I got a phone call a few weeks ago from a friend telling me that they were talking to you guys. And it was just announced by the Pacific Legal Foundation that the headline on their website is "Fighting Pennsylvania's Unfair Restrictions on Out-of-State Craft Breweries." And it's a picture of an Urban Artifact beer. So, what's going on there? What is happening? And, what are you hoping to achieve from this lawsuit that you are being a part of with Pacific Legal?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's probably been 4 or 5 months since Pacific Legal first reached out to us. And for those that don't know, spring of 2020, like a lot of folks, we were heavily into shipping products, directly to consumer where we and it had been something that we had discussed prior to the pandemic, but it got accelerated right by the pandemic. So we sought out every avenue that we could that was legal for states. We got all our licensure in place. We made sure that we had set up the right, coding of the products and whatnot. PA was one of those states that had an available license. So we signed up for it, and, I'm furiously filling out paperwork left and right, getting all that stuff in because I know how bureaucracy is. So we get the license, and then I go to set up kind of the details for PA in our system that handles the orders. And then I'm reading the fine print, and I'm like, wait, this doesn't make sense. How are we going to do this? And basically the key restrictions for PA are that they have a maximum amount of volume that you can ship any one resident for a specific brand across a calendar year, which is like 7-8 cans of 12 ounce. And they also have a maximum that you can ship any resident within a month. And it's effectively like 4 or 5 12 to 16 ounce cans. So effectively, because beer's heavy and shipping costs, a significant amount of money, you generally can't get an order size that makes sense for consumer, because they're not going to order, 1 or 2 6-packs or 4-packs and spend $30 to $45 for those two. It's just price prohibitive, right? So it's unfair in that way. And also, PA doesn't impose those same restrictions on their in-state breweries. In-state breweries can ship to their residents in the state without those restrictions. Breweries in PA, can ship into the state of Ohio without any such restrictions. So really what we're looking for is an even playing field, right? Like if we have to abide by these restrictions, then so should the in-state players. But ideally, maybe those restrictions probably just shouldn't exist for either of us, and we can have an active and open direct-to-consumer market so that folks that want to order Urban Artifact, especially things that we only sell online in our tap room, have the ability to, right? It's just free market access at the very root of it that is often lacking in alcohol legislation.
And the announcement is only about a week or so old right now, a week or two old. What's the response been, when it comes to how consumers even in Pennsylvania that maybe didn't even understand this law, are you seeing that positive output that just even having the headlines out there?
Yeah, I mean, we've had one negative comment on a social media post so far. I thought there was going to be more, quite honest, because there is a lot of that, like, oh, they're a brewery from Ohio and screw Ohio type of thing. But it's been overwhelmingly positive. People don't like bureaucracy at the end of the day. And when people realize how much bureaucracy exists in alcohol, they just can't understand why. And let me say this, like, I'm a big fan of the 3-tier system. I think there's a lot of things in that system that are very helpful for brands like ours that make it, even accessible for us to come to market and grow and exist. So I'm in no way in favor of completely abolishing that, but there's a lot of stuff that's existed for 80, 100 plus years that hasn't adapted with the times today, and needs to. And, craft breweries are one of those that they've been slow to engage on the direct consumer level. So, real quick, you can probably direct consumer, I think it's 8 to 10 states in total, depending on what state you live in or your brand is based in. Wine has about 40 states that they have access to, because wine, 20, 30 years ago, made a concerted effort to change legislation at the state level for, their wineries. And as craft has evolved, I think that's where craft needs to go, because not everybody needs to go through traditional distribution. It doesn't necessarily make sense. It's super competitive. It can be expensive. The margins are low. Direct consumer, though, similar, if not, potentially better margins than, selling at, your tap room, and manageable in a way that, like, you can actually handle it, versus maybe having, a full-time sales team to go out and sell your products and distribution.
Yeah. And like you said, I think people seeing it during that COVID era and being able to go, oh, wait, like, we can buy beer from another state. Like, I don't think a lot of people ever thought about it, because, and like you said, I mean, people do it with wine all the time. I have friends that'll get stuff from California shipped here all the time, but they never think, oh, I can get this I would love to get this beer sent to me. There are, obviously people have, like, kind of the beer in a box, variety packs and things like that there are out there. But direct from the brewery, it hasn't clicked with a lot of consumers. Is that an education piece, or is it something that has to just kind of be brought on by the breweries to be like, listen, we want to be able to do this to make it rise to that level of, like, what wine does?
Yeah, I mean, from the consumer level, it's absolutely education. And what we tend to see the most success with are going to be those exclusive taproom releases that you can't get any other way. People want to order those across multiple states where we already distribute. But we also see consumers that are maybe in more rural areas ordering our products because there might not be a place within 20, 30, 40 minutes for them to drive to and get access to it. And then, from the brewery side, yeah, it needs to be a concerted effort across the country for brewers in specific states that don't have legislation to push for legislation. Because, if your brand's existed for any length of time, I can guarantee you that there's somebody that loves your brand that used to be able to easily access your brand, but has since moved to a different state and can no longer. And they would come in and they would support you online if they had that option, but they oftentimes don't. So that's where I think the big gap is, and the educational gap. I made a big push a few years ago with the BA, and I don't know that I changed many people's minds, but I'll take the opportunity wherever I can. And I'm sure when I find some more free time, I'll continue to push there, because I think there is a lot of opportunity for craft brewers.
Well, I think free time is something that usually comes for you, because you seem to like to stay busy. making sure that you guys are building a great brand there in Cincinnati. And I think what you guys are doing on all these levels that we talked about are something that are important, business aspects that any brewery can learn something from. Be visible out there, whether it's, finding new ways to sell or even finding new ways to fight laws that shouldn't be on the books anymore. So bravo to you guys, to be there. And, maybe you will find some free time to be able to do some more, but it seems like you stay pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean, free time's a relative term. It's more of like what, where's the priority at, and what do we want to spend it on? But yeah, no, I appreciate that. We like hearing that, because it was definitely when we started out, people were like, "What's this weird beer that you're doing?" 9 years ago, especially draft only. So it's cool to see some recognition and see people coming into the brand more and more. And I think there's still plenty of runway for people to get into our types of beer for years to come.
Yeah. Well, Scotty, appreciate you taking the time to talk about all this.
All right. Thanks, John. Appreciate you.
Don't forget, you can always check on brewermag.com. You can also see us on YouTube and listen to us on Spotify. And don't forget daily updates on Facebook, Instagram, and X. I'm Executive Editor John Sicotte for brewermagazine.com.